Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to the last Toastmasters meeting before Christmas. Rob is ready. He's ready. Sergeant is at arms. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. If you will all please mute yourselves, focus on my voice and my screen, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Back to you, Madam President.
Thank you, Master Sergeant at Arms. And tonight for our Toastmaster, we have the very German Dean Carafe. Yay!
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
The theme of tonight's meeting is Christmas cheer. Just for fun, I decided to look that term up and see what the dictionary said. And it roughly coincided with what I thought it was, which was food and drink, especially alcoholic beverages, around the Christmas holiday, and also the joyful and generous attitude expected of people at Christmas. And I would add, Christmas cheer is also being at Toastmasters on our Monday night. With that, I would like to introduce our general evaluator, Joyce Matheson, to introduce her team of evaluators.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. I'm sorry?
Christina had a joke.
Oh, the joke. I'm sorry.
All right, now everybody unmute in case somebody laughs.
Yes, we like to hear laugh. In case somebody laughs. It's great.
There's a lot of confidence.
A lot of confidence in this joke. Okay, here we go. How is Christmas exactly like your job?
Ha ha ha.
You do all the work and some fat guy in a suit gets all the credit.
Yeah.
I like it.
Sadly, that can be true.
I believe it's my turn now.
Yes.
Hello.
I would like to introduce my crack team of highly unpaid professionals that will help us with the meeting tonight. We have Eric Stepper, who will be evaluating the speech for Rob Tidd. Please tell us what you will be doing today.
We're not getting paid.
Well, I could give you some chocolate-covered pretzels.
I'll take you up on it.
Okay.
It's my privilege to evaluate Rob's speech tonight. He is in the effective body language tract. Purpose of his speech is, for this project, is the members to deliver a speech with awareness of intentional and unintentional body language, as well as to learn, practice, and refine how he or she uses nonverbal communication when delivering a speech. So when you're doing your evaluations for Rob, pay particular attention to gestures or the non-use of gestures. This speech is 5 to 7 minutes timer, and I will be happy to give my evaluation when called upon. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next on our team, Kathleen McNulty will be reading the speech objectives for Jackie Graybill's speech. Take it away.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure to be the evaluator for Jackie Graybill's speech. Jackie is on level 3, which means she has electives. She's in the engaging humor pathway, and the elective she's chosen is focusing on the positive. What we want to focus on, as she focuses on the positive, is how she's conveying her feelings and her thoughts. It is part of the humor pathway. I also think it goes very well with our holiday cheer and our theme for the night.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Good job. Our timer tonight is Steve Schwind. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you. One of the goals we strive for is to speak clearly and concisely and deliver a good message. And we have timeframes in which to deliver those messages to hone our skills of delivering that message clearly and succinctly and not put people to sleep. Tonight's speakers are going to be 5 to 7 minutes. We'll have table topics most likely, which the speakers are going to be in a 1 to 2 minute time frame. And then we'll have evaluators at the end of the meeting who will have a window of 2 to 3 minutes in which to deliver their evaluation of the speakers. And the time frames for each of them are at 5 minutes for the scheduled speakers. They will see a green sheet of paper that will blot out everything for a period of time. At 6 minutes, they will see yellow, like the sun's rays in your eyes, suggesting that you're up to speed and thinking about pulling her back. And then finally at 7 minutes, you'll see the red indicating it's time to put her on the ground. The table topics will be green at 1, yellow at 1:30, and red at 2. And our speech evaluators will have green at 2, yellow at 2 minutes 30 seconds, and the indicator to wrap it up at 3 minutes. I'll keep track of everyone's speaking times and report those at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. The grammarian for us tonight will be Mary Syrie. Take it away, Mary.
Thank you, Joyce. I am the grammarian, which means I will be listening very carefully for incorrect use of the English language and exemplary use of the English language. And I think it's important to note too that when you're grammarian or any of the support teams, you're using skills. I'm going to be working on my listening skills and my focus and concentration skills. I have a word of the day for you. I will be putting it into the chat. It is beneficent. Beneficent, doing good or causing good to be done, conferring benefits, kindly in action or purpose. The first time I heard beneficent used was in The Wizard of Oz. The beneficent Oz has every intention of granting your request, he said to Dorothy. I will also allow you to use the noun, which is beneficence, beneficent and beneficence. I'll write that in chat as well in a minute. This is the doing of good, act of goodness or kindness, charity. The beneficence of the anonymous Secret Santa has made a joyous Christmas possible by giving $100 bills to random strangers. Beneficence.
That's going to be a fun one, Mary. Thank you. Ron, would you be beneficent enough to tell us your job as the all counter tonight?
I will. I appreciate for that background noise. The printer decided to start cleaning itself in the middle of our meeting. I'm sure it'll be over in just a moment or two. Mary, before I get started, I do have one question for you. You can remember the first time you heard the word beneficent in Wizard of Oz. When was the second time?
Maybe tonight.
Maybe tonight.
I don't pay attention to second place. It's first
Yeah.
place. It's
Nope.
That's what's
Nobody
important.
does. Yeah, it's either welcome to first place or welcome to last place. Everything in between, we just don't remember. I'll be our awe counter tonight, which honestly is Ian's favorite task, but I was blessed with it this evening. I'll be keeping track of those pesky filler words like the ahs, ums, ers, well, so's, like, buts, repeats, and any other thing. And Patricia, as an added bonus for you, I am going to endeavor to try to keep track of my ins instead of my ings. No promises, but I'll try. Now, of course, I will report back at the end of the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. As my phone goes berserk every time I go to speak, I would like to take things back to Dean, our Toastmaster. Dean, take it away.
Thank you, Joyce, and the evaluation team for explaining your roles very well. The next part of our meeting is the speaking portion. We will have 2 speakers tonight. Our first speaker of the evening notes that each of us most likely did certain things as children that we wish we had done differently. Looking back, we may even feel we should not have done them at all. Tonight, our speaker looks back at some of his own personal childhood moments. Please welcome Rob Tidd in his speech, Boys Being Boys. Boys Being Boys by Rob Tidd.
When I was 9, 10, and 11 years old, my family and I lived on an Apache Indian reservation in southeastern Arizona. My best friends were
Bobby and Dougie,
who we did everything together. On weekends and after school, you would find us down at the river, swimming, fishing, or exploring the nearby mountains and desert canyons. I believe that we were beneficent at that stage of our lives. Bobby and Dougie had older sisters, and we would frequently look into the keyhole of their bedroom doors just to make sure that they were safe and secure. However, there were times when we probably weren't so good. Only about 10% of the kids on the reservation were non-Native American Indian. The Indian kids didn't like the white kids. We weren't well liked at all, so they would pick on us, they would mistreat the little kids. And we decided that we would counterpunch. We established on a weekly basis a rock fight during recess at school. There were only 4 kids in my class who were not Native American Indian: Dougie, Bobby, Julie, and I. Julie didn't have much of an arm, so we relegated her to the JV team until she could get a little more stamina and strength. Our team had fewer members, which meant that we had to throw more rocks more frequently than the other team. It also meant that we usually got caught. Rock throwing at recess was not a school-sanctioned sport, and it usually meant a trip to the principal's office. The recess teacher would line us up in parade formation and march us into the principal's office. I don't remember the principal's name, but I remember Mr. Blackie. Mr. Blackie was a paddle about 2.5 feet long, 4 inches wide, 1.5 inches thick, with holes running up and down the face of that paddle. It was painted black. Mr. Blackie was his name, and corrective behavior was his intended game. When I would enter the principal's office, he would tell me to assume the position. The position meant bending at the waist, hands above the knees, and waiting for the next signal from the principal. He would tell me to count to 3 and brace for impact. I believed that the principal would forget the count because invariably, Mr. Blackie would make impact on the count of 1 or the count of 2 when I was least prepared, which meant that I would get thrown across the floor. I'd pick myself up, dust myself off, and listen to the principal tell me that he didn't want to see me in his office ever again. I would thank the principal for his time, and that most likely he would see me again the following week. My family and the families of my 2 best friends,
Bobby and Dougie,
hiked a lot and did camping out in the desert. I remember one weekend when Bobby, Dougie, and I decided to dig a hole in hopes of finding artifacts and hidden treasure. I grabbed a shovel from camp. We went out in the desert and picked a spot and began to dig. We dug a hole about 3.5 feet deep, and we didn't find anything. It was very disappointing. However, we couldn't just let a perfectly freshly dug hole go to waste. So what were we going to do? That's when I came up with the idea. Let's bury my little brother. So I went to camp, grabbed my little brother. We dropped him into the hole with his hands at his side, and we buried him up to his neck. He couldn't move. We then decided to leave him there for a few minutes. We would go back to camp, and then we'd come back a little bit later and dig him up. When I got to camp, my mother asked me, "Where is your little brother?" I replied, "Who?" She said, "You know perfectly well who I'm talking about. Your little brother who you're supposed to be watching out for." "Oh, that guy. Well, he wanted to play in the sand a little ways outside of camp. We told him we'd be back for him in a few minutes. You show me where your little brother is right now." We took my mom to the location where we planted my little brother in the ground, and she was aghast. She made us dig him up right away, brush him off. She then queued us up in parade formation, which we already knew how to do from all our visits to the principal's office, and we marched back to camp. We all knew what was coming next. We lined up while my dad cut a switch from a nearby mesquite tree. We weren't worried though. We knew that a little switch wasn't going to hurt at all. We all had a layer of calluses from our multiple visits with Mr. Blackie, so we weren't worried about a little switch. We lined up. My dad gave us our punishment. We employed a bit of sham crying and wailing just to appease my dad so he would think that he had applied effective discipline. I often think back about those episodes with my best friends.
Bobby and Dougie.
I truly believe that we were essentially good kids. However, there may have been an occasion when we were not so good. However, in my mind, it didn't mean that we were bad. It simply meant boys being boys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rob. Those certainly were stories that didn't have an abundance of beneficence to them, but stories of small boys generally don't. I certainly have many of my own. One of my favorites involves cow manure and firecrackers, but perhaps we can talk about that some other time. Let's take 1 minute so that everyone can provide comments via chat to Rob. Has that been a minute? Okay. Our next speaker started journaling for her project on November 22nd, the day before she flew back home from England to spend the holidays with her family. She journaled for 2 weeks consecutively and continued the practice for a total of 22 days. Much has happened in the past month, and journaling has helped Jackie make sense of it all. Please welcome Jackie Graybill with her speech, The Stories We Tell Ourselves.
The stories we tell ourselves make all the difference. Brene Brown, who is an author and TEDx speaker who has millions and millions of views on her 2 TEDx talks, in her book about resilience called Rising Strong, talks about our SFD, which is our sucky first draft. The awesome thing about this journaling project, the idea is to journal. There's my puppy. Can you hear him? To journal about the negatives, the positives, and what you're grateful for, and to see how your opinion and your story can be reframed into the positive. I was sitting in bed at my aunt and uncle's, and I was sick. I had a sinus infection, and I was not able to see little dude, who you probably hear doing his best impersonation of being excited. And here is how I started out that day with journaling. This is December 1st. I feel miserable, yuck, gross, sad, tired, exhausted, overwhelmed, passionless, lonely, unproductive, struggling. Have any of you felt like that this year in 2020? Most of us have had some of those feelings, maybe not all at once, but 2020 has been a year. And Mary, it's amazing that you talked about The Wizard of Oz and Oz's beneficence, because it just so happens that my favorite movie of all time is The Wizard of Oz. And through my journaling, I started reframing my story of my sickness and how it felt like it was going on, and I would never get to the other side of it, and things would never be good again. And I'd like to share with you what I wrote. I asked myself a question, and questions are powerful. Here's what I asked. What if Dorothy needed that rest in the field of poppies before going on to face her destiny with fierce and triumphant courage? What if all I need is to embrace this time of rest? What if it's not a misery, but a blessing, setting me up to succeed in my next phase of life? What if it is a necessary part of my journey, and I don't have to bear it as a misery, but instead I can embrace it like a blessing? It's all up to me. I now choose to enjoy the rest and sink into my own field of poppies. That visual, that metaphor changed things. And I was able to go back to sleep, to embrace the rest, and get ready for the next exciting thing that was going to happen, which was seeing my puppy again. He was so excited. I was so excited. And I want to share a little bit of that with you as well, because this was something I was so grateful for. Out of all of the moments of this year, it might be the thing I was most grateful for, am most grateful for. Today, a little piece of my heart floated back into place. All is now right in my world, more than right. It is good, joyous, filled with love, and I also feel at peace. Tyrion is a miracle, a sweet, fluffy little marvel of a being. absolutely perfect in every way, except barking at inopportune times. But we won't mention that. That's not my drill. I didn't realize until today just how much being away from him had been affecting me, but it did. It has. And now things have been set right, and I am never going to leave him behind again. He is a part of me, the best part of me, the true, loving, curious, friendly, purposeful, in the moment, patient, innocent, playful part of me. And I'm so thankful to be reunited with him. And then last week, things were a little different because my uncle, who my aunt was told was the worst COVID patient in the hospital in Wenatchee, died at the age of 57. And I wrote this. It seems like what our family is going through is a microcosm of what so many people are dealing with this year. Life is precious. It is important. What we spend it doing is important. It's not the technology, but the relationships. It's about how we made a difference in our corner of the world we were placed in. What difference do I make? What difference have I made in the lives of others? That is what truly matters. So as I close, I want to ask you this. How are you beneficent toward other people? How can you embrace rest in this season that seems like it's going to go on forever, but it's not? There's going to be an end. And what are you placing value on in your life? Maybe take out a journal and ask yourself some questions. Writing is amazing for reframing what we are going through. And our stories, our sucky first drafts, and the meaning that we give to our stories is so important. As we come to the end of this year, maybe consider doing this project. Journaling just might change your perspective a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for a very moving speech. I'm sorry about your family's loss. And I would second that notion that journaling is in fact very useful. I've often written my thoughts down, especially in times of great change and especially traumatic times. It's pretty therapeutic and it helps one reframe it, as you say. So great job. Now, if we can have 1 minute from the timer to provide comments for Jackie's speech.
Four, 3, 2, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Steve. That concludes the speaking portion of our meeting tonight. The next part is table topics. And for that, to lead that, let me introduce our table topics master, Ian Adams. Please welcome Ian.
Thanks, Dean. Jackie, something you said in your speech, in fact, I'll quote it here. Life is important. What we spend it doing is important, was a perfect phrase to kick off our theme tonight, which was Christmas cheer. I wrote down a bunch of different topics tonight. Some of them are a little bit goofy, and I'm hoping to hear some laughter among folks tonight. But I wanted to focus on that passage that you presented us with. To me, Christmas is all about togetherness. It's all about giving of ourselves to the ones that we love. And that passage really kind of struck with me. Life is important. All of our lives are important. And it's important that we all remember to not get so focused on ourselves, but to also remember that we can be so impactful to those around us just in our abilities to give of ourselves. And that doesn't necessarily mean gifts or anything like that. It's just simply sometimes being a shoulder to cry on, or somebody to talk to, a friendly good morning. That's all it takes. And that is what Christmas cheer is about to me, is remembering to do those things. Christina, I'd like to know tonight what Christmas cheer means to you.
Thank you, Ian. Christmas cheer means a variety of different things. One thing that comes to mind is times with our now grown children, where we now at this point, while they are in their late 30s and early 40s, we are now learning about all the things they did when they were in junior high and high school. Having survived it, now raising their own children who are about that same age, it's pretty comical hearing about some of the things that they did while they were in school. Our son Gabe managed to roll his car with 4 friends inside, plus himself, somewhere up number 2 Canyon. They all walked away, pushed the car back onto the road, and drove home. He did lose the rear view mirror on one side and got some scratches on the car. Laid it down a whole lot. Oh, we just slid off the road, kind of bumped aside. No, they rolled the thing. I'm sure there are way more stories yet to be told. I am sad that this year we don't get to have that time with our kids, to hear more of those stories, to hear what their kids are up to, or what they think they're up to that they aren't. We're looking forward to next year already. 2021 is going to be so much better than what we're experiencing now. So hang in there, we're one day closer. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks, Christina. I saw a funny meme on Facebook a couple of days ago, and it said something to the effect of, just wait till 2020 turns 21 and starts drinking. We'll see. One of the things that my wife is really focused on lately is trying to get our family to develop a tradition, something we do every Christmas or every holiday season. I grew up in a family that didn't have traditions per se. I guess our traditions were to work. I'm struggling here in coming up with some sort of a tradition for our family to do. And I don't know why that is. And I think it has to do with the fact that just because we didn't have any traditions, I never put a lot of emphasis on how important certain things around the holidays might be. Lucas, I'm wondering, do you and your family have any holiday traditions? Something I might be able to borrow?
Yes, thank you, Ian. It's funny that you say that because my wife and I just moved into a new house and we're by ourselves now. So a lot of the traditions that we relied on our parents or our family for setting up, we no longer have, and we're kind of left to create our own traditions and make it a fun holiday. When I was actually talking to my coworker today, and one of the things that his family does is exchange different ornaments based on something that happened during the year. For instance, they pick an ornament for each family member that signified something that was eventful or exciting or commemorative of something that happened in that year. And then each year they get more ornaments. And then when you're decorating in future years, it allows you to reflect and look back on those fun memories and times in your life. So that's something that Alyssa, my wife, and I are going to start doing. I thought it was a really fun thing to do for the holidays, and it's a tradition that I'm looking forward to continuing. Thank you, Ian. Back to you.
Thanks, Lucas. Along the lines of trying to come up with a tradition for our family, we're trying to narrow down what we want to eat for dinner on Christmas evening. And so far, the last couple of years, we've kind of settled on turkey. We're going to have turkey again this year, pretty much the traditional Thanksgiving type of dinner. Mary, what's for Christmas dinner at your house?
We have a tradition for Christmas Eve dinner. When we lived in Seattle, we lived very close to Fisherman's Terminal. I found a recipe for clam linguine and pepper flatbread. So I would stop down at Fisherman's Terminal, get fresh clams, take them home, and we had that for dinner Christmas Eve. Well, I can't rely on clams being available over at Mike's Meats. About 2 weeks ago, I was scanning the meat cases and they had a pile of Penn Cove clams. So we had our Christmas Eve dinner early this year, more like December 5th. We're starting a new tradition for our Christmas Eve dinner this year. We're going to start having pizzas, little personal small-sized pizzas, maybe 4 of them just for the 2 of us with unusual toppings on them, like artichoke. I like feta cheese and shrimp on my pizza. So we're going to give that a try this year. I sure missed those. I'm sorry, I certainly have missed the clam linguine. You kind of have to move around with what you've got and what's available. So my tradition has been Christmas Eve dinner, and we're starting a new one this year. Good luck, Ian.
Thanks, Mary. That sounds delicious, by the way. My kids are pretty young, relatively, although they seem to be growing up faster and faster every day. But at 10 and 8 years old, we're at this point where things are changing with regard to Christmas. I have a daughter that's not so sure that there isn't something up about how that elf moves around from day to day and why Santa doesn't look the same every year when we go to see him at the mall, things like that. Vicki, you've got kids. Do you have any advice for me on how to deal with the talk I'm about to have with my daughter?
Thank you very much, Ian. Yes, that is a very important talk because you don't want them to lose trust and that perhaps the whole truth and nothing but the truth was given to them throughout their life. And so it's a balance. And I remember when my kids were at that age and were questioning it. And I always said that with Christmas, those who believe still get the magic of Christmas. And by doing so, they would still say they believed, and they would get a gift from the elf or from Santa that was specifically for them on Christmas Day. Even as they grew up and grew older, and still didn't realize it, or they realized that it wasn't true in certain senses. But as they are now adults, they've realized that Christmas spirit is the feeling and believing. And that's what it's all about, is having the Christmas spirit. And that's what's carried on, because I like to give them that hope, and we just have fun with it. And now that we have littles again, and we get to have the magic of Christmas morning, they get to see that magic really does come to life when they get that, the littles get the present and really have that treasured moment. And so, yes, we still believe in this house.
Thanks, Vicki. That's great advice, and much like what we've been trying to focus on with our kids. But because they are starting to question things a little bit more, one of the questions I'm having a little bit of trouble answering is, how does Santa get down all these chimneys? We have a tiny little gas fireplace chimney. It's maybe 3 or 4 inches around. Ron, can you shed some light on this for us? How does Santa get down all these different sized chimneys?
Well, that's probably an easier one, Ian, to describe to your kids than, well, when they find the presents in your closet. And that's how our son realized that Santa wasn't for real. And I think that's a pretty common one. That's how my cousin realized. I remember him telling me that he found some presents in his parents' closets. Curious why these kids are going through their presents or their parents' closets like mine and my cousin, but nonetheless, they do. Remember how absolutely just angry my son was with it. He was throwing things, and he was mad for a good week or so. But back to your question, I think for kids, we just tell them that it's magic. That Santa stands up at the top of the chimney, he takes a look down, and he twinkles his nose or does something, and poof, magically he's standing in the living room. Because you don't see him dirty either, right? In these different TV shows and cartoons and such with Santa, he's in the house, he's in the room, and he's never covered with soot or any other type of debris, nor is he left footprints where he tracked debris from the fireplace into the house. And good question about how he gets down the chimney, but how does he get back up to where the sleigh and the reindeer and everything else are as well? And if it's a 6-inch chimney or a 15-inch chimney like mine, he's not going to fit in it either way. But how is he going to get back up to the top? Doesn't really matter. The fact is, he does. And my chimney also, I have one of them, because I have rebuilt my chimney this summer. It's one of the things that I did. And it's not just a straight shot from the fireplace up to the top. This one has 2 90-degree bends in it. Like, think of it as an S bend. How the heck would Santa get down that thing and navigate through the horizontal part and then drop back down to where the firebox is, let alone whether we had a fire in there or not? That's another thing that we haven't talked about today. How does Santa do that without getting all burned up? Never saw Santa burned up in any of those cartoons either. As I said at the beginning, Ian, just tell your kids it's magic. That's the best we could do. And you can save them from this 2 or 3 minutes worth of a description that you just got from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Like I mentioned before, that's what we're trying to focus on, is just the magic of Christmas. And that alone can explain every question that they really can come up with for us. I think we've got time. Oh, we're really about out of time, but I'm going to ask this one question anyway. Dean, do you believe in Santa?
Of course. And you can see him at all the malls. Perhaps it's just visual or virtual rather. In fact, I would like to elaborate on the last question, because I think that some of these new quantum technologies that are being discovered have a great role in that. I mean, not only does Santa have to get down your chimney, he has to be in about 2 billion different houses all at the same time. The only way you can explain that is by some sort of quantum effect. You know, you have this wave particle duality where things look like they're in 2 different places at the same time, and it's only really in one place when you finally observe it. And there it is, there's the electron. Well, since nobody ever sees Santa Claus bring the presents, nobody ever actually sees him coming down the chimney or any of that sort of stuff. So he can just use his quantum technologies to pop into one place, I'm sorry, 1 billion places all on Christmas Eve, and poof, there you have it, the modern day explanation of Santa. How's that?
I love it. Thank you very much, Dean. Thanks everyone for playing along tonight. Some great answers. At this point, I'm going to turn it right back over to you, Dean.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Ian. I really appreciated those questions and the answers that folks gave on their different thoughts of Christmas. The next part of our meeting is the evaluation portion. And for that, I want to return control of the meeting to our general evaluator to lead that part of the meeting, Joyce Matheson.
I have had so much fun during this meeting and cannot wait to hear what our crack team of highly unpaid crack professionals are about to tell us. We will start with Eric Stepper with the evaluation of Rob Ted's speech. Please take it away.
Thank you, Ms. General Evaluator. Well, Rob, you almost didn't get an evaluation because I heard that voice, Hobby Dougie. I lost it. I went into compulsions because I knew it was going to come back around. But I always enjoy when I see you on the speaking agenda, because you always take it very seriously as far as what you're going to present, and you embody whatever the theme needs to be of that speech. Speech in particular theme was gestures. You had great gestures. You, first of all, you had a good distance. We could see all your gestures, all your body movements, and I appreciated that. You moved in towards the camera at one point and moved back out. You could have maybe even done that more. You talked about lining up, and you talked about marching, and you got all into that. Had description of the shoe, and I was right there with you, your description, because when I was in 6th grade, I got caught throwing snowballs, and we had a 70-year-old grandpa for a principal, and he says, all right, no boys, you can't be doing that. I come in here and assume the position, and he's just talking to us, and I'm thinking I'm going to get out of this. And he says, this is going to hurt me more than you, and you could probably poke some whack before you're even, paying attention. There's no counting, no nothing. So I was there with you, and it just brought it all back. So very good descriptions, good gestures. You talked about assuming the position, and you showed that. You talked about being thrown across the floor, and you put the Superman hands out. You had other good gestures. You grabbed your brother, and then you buried him up to his neck. Then you had a dialogue with your mother, and it was back and forth, and your mother had her hands on her hips, and she was aghast. And then all of a sudden you had another assuming position event, and it was all very good. You and 2 things I think that can't be dismissed here is that a lot of people don't do well, is your facial gestures and expressions, and your face lights up, and your head moves, and your lips move, and they're subtle, but they add to it. The other thing is that people have a hard time just standing still. They're fidgeting with their hands, or they're doing something, or they just got these tics going on. And when you stood there with your arms straight down, it didn't look unnatural. It looked very good. So I appreciated that. One thing to challenge yourself is right now you've got good lighting, but when you stand back it's tough. And if you look at this screen here, everybody has different lighting. Getting lighting right and good is tough, but try and work on that. Otherwise, great speech. I enjoyed it. I enjoy your humor, delivered very dryly, like it's going to go by you. You got to pay attention. I appreciate that. Miss General Evaluator.
That was a wonderful evaluation. Kathleen, you are up next.
Thank you. The first thing I would point out about this speech is it's a new Jackie. I'm used to seeing Jackie in her speeches very animated with lots of movement and action and voices. And it was a very contemplative speech. I want to thank you first and foremost for sharing something so personal. You didn't have to read out of your journal, and you chose to do that and share those experiences with us. I want to thank you for doing that. I did like your calmness. It was appropriate for the topic that you were describing. You were sharing with us how you would put something in your journal and try to change your attitude about it by journaling it. You took us through quite a few emotions. I enjoyed that. We started with feeling crummy and sick, and then flipping that and making something positive out of that. A good lesson for all of us in that. Talking about Tyrion, and we know how much you love Tyrion. By the way, congratulations on being calm with him barking in the background. That was very heroic. My dog is here, and any second it could happen. After Tyrion, to be honest, you kind of shocked me with the story about your uncle. Again, though, such a personal sharing, and the purpose of what you were doing for your project was to share your thoughts. I'm reading from it, to show that you were aware of your thoughts and feelings. It's very clear that you were aware of those things as you wrote them down and shared them with us. One thing you might think of doing, and this would be a challenge and it's very personal, you shared your reactions, but not your actions that you were going to implement out of this. The first example, when you were feeling crummy, you did that. You know, I've changed my attitude. Here's my new approach, and I'm doing this. As you went through, you know, there was less of that. How am I growing from this experience? That would be my only suggestion, but that's a very personal thing. I thought your pace was good. I loved your quote from Brene Brown. It's wonderful, I think, to bring in sort of an outside character into your speech. Overall, I thought it was very enjoyable. I loved seeing the new contemplative Jackie. And also, just before I finish up, being very beneficent to Tyrion, who was barking in the background.
I get a kick out of Tyrion. He's such a cutie patootie. Steve, how did we do on timing tonight?
We did pretty well tonight. Thank you. I, of course, must beg a little beneficence. I drifted on a couple of these. Rob, I don't know why. I think I was enamored with your speech. I got a belly laugh because I was there. We have this great place south of Wishick where I grew up, and there was a hog barn out there, and we'd go out there and ride pigs until they lost too much weight to be butchered. Your time, I'm going to give you a little window, is about 6:46 to 7:16 when I re-engaged my brain. Jackie, you were 6:58. Christina, 2:08. Lucas was 1:18. Mary, 1:26. Vicky, 1:38. And Ron, once again, I don't know why, I plugged your name into Ian's and went on hold, sitting here thinking, when is his soliloquy going to end? And he's going to name a speaker. You had a pretty good go at it. I'm going to say you were well beyond 3 minutes, and it was great nonetheless. Eric, 314 on your evaluation, and Kathleen, 323. Back to you, Ms. General Evaluator.
Oh, thank you so much. I get a kick out of you every time. Mary, how many of us did the word of the day and how did we do grammar wise?
6 of us did word of the day, used word of the day, not did. Joyce, Rob, Dean, Jackie, Kathleen, and Steve. It's a fun word to say too. It's got a lot of syllables and it's just sort of like saying windowsill or pickle relish, beneficence. It's a fun word to say. I listened carefully. What a crowd of excellent speakers we have tonight. I really found just little picky things. But Rob, I thought your speech was hilarious. I like that, yeah, we decided we would counterpunch. Julie didn't have much of an arm, so we put her on the JV team. That's such a guy thing to do, you know? And we had a layer of calluses. That's quite a visual to put forth. And your sham crying and wailing. I could just see this happening. Jackie, you had this string of adjectives for the feelings that you had this year. And yes, I think we all could relate to those. That was very, very good. And I love the metaphor with Dorothy's Field of Poppies. And if you haven't read the book, The Wizard of Oz, it's a good read. I recommend it. Dean, thank you for the lesson on quantum physics. It was very good. Good reminder. I think that explains Santa Claus. Lucas, you gave me something. You said that you and your wife were by ourselves and it should be by ourselves. Commemorative. You had an interesting pronunciation. Commemorative, something like that. It was commemorative. Ron, you're very pragmatic. I liked that we never saw Santa Claus burned up either. That's good. That's a good visual. That's worth, this whole Santa Claus thing would be a good speech. Kathleen, you had a couple. You use gonna instead of going to, and you also crutch onto sort of and kind of. You can remove those and just describe what it is. It wasn't sort of or kind of, it just is. That's my report.
Thank you, Mary. Now we get to find out who's been naughty, who's been nice with the odd counters report. Ron, how did we do?
We did very well. I did my best to pay attention, but both the speeches were great and I wanted to watch them and I got fairly engaged with those. And I did not count a filler word for either of our speeches tonight. And I may actually have to go back on YouTube and watch the video to see if I was asleep at the wheel or not. I don't feel like I was, particularly with Rob's. I was paying attention and Rob's sentences are so deliberate and the whole speech was deliberate and used pauses very effectively. That the times that I would expect a filler word to sneak its way in, there was just a pause and then you continued on. And I saw that or observed that with several of the folks tonight that I didn't record anything for. Rob, Jackie, Dean, I didn't have anything. Vicky, and was your go-to tonight. it made me realize that this form that I printed from Toastmasters site about 10 minutes before our meeting didn't have and. I had to go put it in the margin. He had probably a half dozen or so ands, some ums, a couple of so's, and a but. Lloyd, I didn't hear a thing from you tonight. Yeah, it's because you were muted. You didn't actually say anything, I don't believe. Lucas, clean. Mary, I had an and a kinda. Did pretty well overall. We'll just move down to Eric, an you know, and a couple of ands. And me, I figure I had about a half dozen filler words in there. I counted for a couple for myself. I just had an right there. I really did try not to go over, and I kept on looking down, waiting for these colors to be held up, and Steve never held the darn things up. And I was wondering for a bit there, did I just miss it? Was I looking at something else and did I miss it? And enough time went by. I said, well, the heck with it. I've spoken long enough. This has got to be over. And thanks for coming clean, Steve, and saying that it really wasn't me, that you just didn't hold up the signs. I appreciate that. That's the end of my report. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Fantastic. I caught myself with at least 2 ums myself. It's amazing how when you just say it, your whole body goes, oh, Joyce, no, back. As for the entire meeting in itself, I believe that we have, I don't want to jinx us, but I think we have something very good going on with our Zoom meetings. It's been nothing but an enjoyable experience. And I'm so glad that you did not choose me for the table topics, because my smart alecky mind was conjuring up a story about how the Santa program is just another way of getting out of driving school, and all the people who got busted for breaking and entering had to be Santa and bring presents instead of taking presents. That's another story for later.
Who are we sending our votes to, if I may butt in for a moment?
Good question. Who are we sending our votes to? Oh, Kathleen. Let's send our votes to Kathleen. And I was just about the end of my tangent, so don't worry. I'm not gonna talk about felony Santa anymore. I'm going to hand it over to the president so we can have some semblance of sanity while I mute myself. Thank you very much.
You're assuming that I have sanity to provide, Joyce. We did not hear anything from Ms. Pat tonight, and I wondered if she would like to share anything with us while we tally our votes before we ask Lloyd if he has anything to share. It looks like a lovely red top on, Pat. It's gorgeous.
Actually, it's got Scotties with wreaths around their neck. It's a Christmas shirt. Yeah, I could share a childhood memory. Every Christmas Eve, I would go to bed, and every Christmas morning, I would wake up and there'd be a Christmas tree and presents. So Santa must have come during the nighttime. And that's a beautiful memory to have, you know, the magic of Christmas. On the other nitty-picky side, I was ready to give Ron a gold star on his forehead because he was so careful about his ing words. But at the very end of his presentation, he said, wondering, paying, and looking. So, Guy, you're just going to get a brass star instead of a gold star this time. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Pat. You're delightful as always. Lloyd, is there anything you would like to share before we go to our vote tallier?
Sure. This both the speech evaluations and the 3 reports reminded me of something I heard at the end of the final round of the international speech contest 3 or 4 years ago when they were doing interviews, and they asked the guy who eventually won 3rd place what was the best way to become a good speaker, and he instantly replied, evaluate other speeches as often as you can, because that makes you think specifically about what worked and what didn't work and why, as opposed to just whether you liked it or not. And he was right about that. And I think all of our evaluations and the 3 reports tonight illustrated that.
Thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate that. I'm going to be an evaluator soon. I promise. I'll quit speaking. Kathleen, do you have a tally for us?
I do. I volunteered to do this at a time when the vote was so extremely close. I had been back through it 3 times. Our winner tonight by a single vote is Jackie. Very popular speeches tonight.
I have to admit, they were both exemplary speeches.
Thank you, Steve. Rob, you're phenomenal. You're such a phenomenal storyteller. Is there anything else that anybody would like to share? I know we're over by about 6 minutes, but it's Christmas week. Anything else? Oh, Eric, yes.
Dean, I wish I would have had wave particle duality when I was trying to tell my kids about Santa Claus. I would have made it a whole lot simpler.
I was going to say, all you need to do is watch the Christmas Chronicles and show your kids. They do it just like that. It's magic.
Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
So
Merry
grateful for all of you. Your
Thank
gifts.
you. Merry
Can't wait to hear what everybody gets next week.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.